is found not guilty of killing his ex-wife Nicole and Ronald Goldman. 2 years later, a civil trial finds Simpson liable for the slayings, ordering him to pay millions of dollars to the victims' families. 1226. St. Francis of Assisi, the founder of the Franciscan order, dies. Known for his devotion to the poor, he is made a Catholic saint 2 years later. 1990. West and East Germany become one country again, reunifying after 45 years apart. That division lasted from the Nazi defeat in World War II through the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of communism in Eastern Europe. 1951. Baseball's shot heard round the world in the deciding National League playoff game in New York. Bobby Thompson with the New York Giants hits a 3-run home run in the bottom of the ninth inning. The Giants beat the Brooklyn Dodgers and head for the World Series, losing to the New York Yankees. And 1955. Birth of two children's TV classics. Captain Kangaroo arrives on CBS. M-I-C-K-E-Y-M-O-U-S-E. While the Mickey Mouse Club premieres on ABC. Today in History, October 3rd. Camille Bohannon, The Associated Press.
Gentlemen, this is Democracy Manifest.
Well played, business pro. Well played.
This Marketplace podcast is supported by Mingle, the agile project management tool for software teams focused on continuous improvement. Mingle's custom card walls and realistic reporting help teams start with familiar practices and change as they go. More at thoughtworks.com/mingle.
A government shutdown with workers outside government getting hurt.
Let Marketplace be your guide to the modern world. Subscribe to the Marketplace Tech Report podcast. Find it on iTunes or at marketplace.org/podcasts.
From 8 p.m. in New York, good morning. I'm Mark Garrison, in for David Brancaccio. Some 800,000 federal employees are out of work during the shutdown. But don't forget about government contractors. Marketplace's Dan Weissman reports on how they can face trouble, even if they're not furloughed.
Like everything relating to the government shutdown, the question of whether a particular contractor is still on the job it depends. For instance, many contractors doing jobs where the money's preloaded can keep going, unless, say, they need a furloughed employee to sign off on something. Attorney Elizabeth Farrell is a partner in government contracts at McKenna, Long & Aldridge.
I had one client who has a construction project going, and the actual site is now shuttered. It's locked up.
Big companies like, say, Boeing may keep workers on payroll but shift them around to work on other projects. But what about smaller companies? Alan Schwatkin is with the Professional Services Council, a trade group for government contractors.
I know many of our smaller companies who will probably suck it up longer because in the professional services world, the most valuable commodity you have is the people you have working for them.
And replacing them doesn't come cheap. I'm Dan Weissman for Marketplace.
And let's do the numbers. Stocks are mixed around the world. In Europe, a bit of a mixed bag there with lower in Germany and France. Asian markets closed mostly up on positive economic news out of China. Japan finished a bit lower, though. A win for BP in the ongoing legal battle over Gulf oil spill claims. A federal court agreed Wednesday with BP's argument that the settlement could lead to false or inflated claims of damage. Court proceedings not over yet. Yesterday on Wall Street, the S&P dropped a 0.1%. The Dow lost 0.4 to end at 15,133. Tesla's stock closed down 6.2% yesterday after video of one of its electric cars on fire went viral. Marketplace's David Gura joins us. Good morning, David.
Morning, Mark.
So a lot of interest in the cause. What do we know?
So apparently the driver hit something. The company says that the driver hit a big piece of metal, and that is what caused the fire. Evidently, what caught fire was one of the car's lithium-ion batteries, and that's what powers the Tesla Model S. It's a sort of sporty sedan that's in the $60,000 to $70,000 range. And Tesla's gotten a lot of praise in the past for its batteries. I mean, Tesla's been really innovative, and other car companies have started to use Tesla's technology in their vehicles.
Now, battery fires have gotten attention with other companies. Talk about that a little.
That's right, Mark. I mean, it happened with the Boeing 787 Dreamliner, that new jumbo jet you may remember. And a couple of years back, batteries in the Chevy Volt were catching fire. Look, electric cars haven't caught on in the way that say, hybrids have. And a lot of that has to do with battery life. I mean, the goal for these companies is to develop a battery that can go far on one charge and doesn't cost a small fortune. And for a lot of drivers, the battery is still a hang-up. I mean, I think it's fair to say that this video, Mark, probably hasn't helped that.
Definitely not. David Gura in Washington, thanks so much.
Thanks.
Do you enjoy the music we play between stories? Visit the Marketplace Music section to browse playlists for all of our programs and to buy those songs on Amazon. A percentage of each purchase goes towards supporting our programs. Find more online at marketplace.org/music.
This week's Obamacare insurance exchange rollout is getting special attention in America's Latino communities. That's the topic for today's conversation with our friends at Univision. Stephen Keppel covers economics there and joins us from Miami. Hello, Stephen.
Good morning, Mark.
So the Affordable Care Act is an especially big deal in some ways for Hispanics because the community has a large population of uninsured. Explain why that's the case.
One of the main reasons is that they work disproportionately in lower wage jobs that don't offer health benefits and other types of benefits. You see an overrepresentation in the services industry and construction that haven't traditionally offered health care.
Now, there are 4 key states for America's Hispanic population. We have New York, California, Florida, and Texas. And among those states, they've kind of taken 2 different paths. So I wonder if you can just talk a bit about the different healthcare experience ahead for those in New York and California versus those Latinos that live in Florida and Texas.
If you're Latino and living in California and New York, you're probably, or you have a much more likelihood of getting insurance through Obamacare. And it's mainly because the states are much more active. They have their own exchanges, and especially California, which has the highest population of Hispanics. They've been working really hard to get the message out. And New York as well has sort of done a lot of outreach and are really making a push.
And so what's the story in Florida and Texas?
So it's a completely different story. Nationally, 6 out of 10 Hispanics are eligible for the Medicaid expansion. But actually more than half of those that are eligible for the expansion live in states like Florida and Texas that aren't offering it. So by some estimates, almost 2 million Hispanics living in Texas will not end up with insurance because they're not expanding Medicaid. In Florida, there's been a lot less promotion of the law. And again, it's because of the state government's opposition to Obamacare.
Now, Stephen, how is the Obamacare rollout going as far as providing Spanish language resources to those who need it?
It's really a mixed bag. In California, their exchange launched in English, in Spanish. Meanwhile, the federally run exchanges, you won't be able to apply online in Spanish until later in October. And they have Spanish speakers available on the phone to answer questions and help get you enrolled. But it's, it's something they're going to have to work on to really reach the Spanish speakers in the country that are going to need insurance.
Okay, Stephen Keppel at Univision. Thanks very much.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
And finally, shutting down love. With the government closed for business, hundreds of couples are scrambling to replan weddings set for upcoming weekends. Those who spent months or even years planning to take vows in national parks and monuments now have just a few days to come up with Plan B. Wishing them all the best. In New York, I'm Mark Garrison. This is the Marketplace Morning Report. This is 8 p.m., American Public Media.
Touchdown. Ego time.
That's what she said.
Washington stalemate.
They will not negotiate.
Day 3 of the partial shutdown.
This is entirely unnecessary.
Deadly boat disaster off Sicily.
As many as 500 on the vessel.
Arrest in black market drug scheme.
Set up to be completely anonymous.
Good morning. I'm Steve Kathan with the CBS World News Roundup. The partial government shutdown is into a 3rd day after a meeting of the major players produced no breakthroughs. 72% in a just-released CBS News poll don't approve of a shutdown tied to differences over health care reform, and Republicans edge out Democrats when it comes to who's to blame. Our coverage this morning begins with White House correspondent Peter Mayer. Peter?
Steve, there's no sign of a way out of this budget crisis. Listen to Senate Majority Leader Reid and House Speaker Boehner.
We are locked in tight on Obamacare.
The American people expect their leaders to come together.
President Obama's meeting with congressional leaders last night only underscored deep differences. The shutdown impasse could hit the October 17th deadline to raise the debt ceiling and the prospect of a first-ever default. The president told CNBC House Republicans could end the budget mess.
John Boehner right now has not been willing to say no to a faction of the Republican Party that are willing to burn the House down because of an obsession over my healthcare initiative.
Now to Capitol Hill, where CBS's Bob Fuss has more on the math and politics.
There are a small but growing number of Republicans in the House who say this has gone far enough, and they want to vote to just fund the government. Counting Democrats, it's almost certain there is a majority in the House to do that. But Republican Speaker John Boehner won't allow that vote. That's because the vast majority of Republicans don't want it, and it is politically perilous for a Republican speaker to try to pass something against his party's will.
This is Pam Coulter. With no ability to extend expired grants, Head Start programs in 4 states have been forced to close, affecting more than 3,000 children. Yvette Sanchez Fuentes heads the Office of Head Start and says kids will suffer.
They get their breakfast, their snacks, lunch. Kids also get health and dental screenings.
23 more programs serving 18,000 kids in 11 states are also in danger of losing grant money in the shutdown.
For this weekend, at least, the partial shutdown will not affect Service Academy football games. As millions of us sign up for health insurance in new exchanges, millions of others are being left out. CBS's Elaine Quijano says it's because they live in states that have refused to expand Medicaid.
45-year-old Bertha McIntyre needs daily medication to manage her diabetes and heart problems. She does not qualify for Medicaid in Missouri because her family income is too high, about $1,200 a month.
There's only so much you can buy with $1,200 a month.
As many as 7 million people make too much to qualify for Medicaid, but not enough to get help to buy a plan on the new healthcare exchanges.
So do you just not go to the doctor sometimes?
You just don't go. I know that my health suffers for it, but am I going to take food out of a child's stomach, or am I going to do without going to the doctor?
Republican State Senator John Lamping argues Missouri faces tough choices, too.
The entire cost of Medicaid in Missouri is 1/3 of Missouri's budget. We can barely afford to be in the Medicaid program as it exists today.
States can decide to expand Medicaid at any time. The federal government insists it's up to them to bridge the existing coverage gap. Elaine Quijano, CBS News, New York.
Now to Danbridge, Tennessee, where 8 people were killed, 2 critically injured in a highway crash involving a North Carolina church bus, a big rig, and SUV. CBS's Michelle Miller's at the scene.
The Tennessee Highway Patrol is looking at the bus driver's qualifications and his driving record. They have not ruled out the possibility of mechanical failure.
It's thought the bus may have blown a tire before the wreck. Overseas, more than 90 are dead after a ship caught fire and sank off Sicily. CBS's Sabina Castelfranco in Rome.
The vessel was carrying 450 to 500 migrants. Most of them were from sub-Saharan Africa.
Italian rescuers have pulled more than 140 survivors from the water. A normally quiet branch of the San Francisco Public Library became a scene of turmoil yesterday afternoon.
Staffers at the Glen Park branch hear a commotion, a small crash coming from the science fiction area of the library, and they identified themselves as being from the FBI and saying they were making an arrest.
Agents seized 29-year-old Ross Ulbricht, who was in the midst of an online chat on his laptop. He's accused of running a huge black market web operation called Silk Road that allegedly brokered more than $1 billion in illegal drug sales using the alias Dread Pirate Roberts, and with trying to order a murder for hire targeting someone who threatened to expose him. After a 5-month Los Angeles trial, the defense prevails in the negligence case surrounding Michael Jackson's death.
The Jackson family left the courthouse here yesterday with absolutely nothing. The jury rejected the family's claim that concert promoter AEG Live was negligent when it hired Conrad Murray to be Michael Jackson's doctor. The jury foreman spoke afterwards.
We felt he was competent to do the job of being a general practitioner. Now, that doesn't mean that we felt he was ethical.
The Jackson family has not said whether it will appeal the decision. Steve Futterman, CBS News, Los Angeles.
A new law took effect this week that has people who live in coastal and low-lying areas scrambling for a lifeline. Here's CBS's Heather Bosch.
It's not just floodwaters, but rising insurance rates that have many communities worried.
It's going to be devastating.
Mike O'Reilly is talking about the Flood Insurance Reform Act. The federal government is rolling back subsidies for the most flood-prone areas. Ray Lehman, with the Libertarian think tank, says Congress is trying to make rates more fair and keep FEMA afloat.
The program is deeply in debt. It's about $24 billion in the hole.
We have to stop